indicted
Big breaking news story, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking: Manhattan grand jury votes to indict Donald Trump. Trump will be the first former president to be indicted. The grand jury's vote regards an alleged settlement made with adult film actress Stormy Daniels during the former president's 2016 campaign. According to 5 people with knowledge of the matter per the New York Times, Trump and Daniels allegedly had a sexual encounter in 2006, according to the claim. Trump is the first former president to face criminal charges after office. While the specific charges are currently unknown, an indictment is expected to be announced as Trump will be asked to surrender and face arraignment. A lawyer for the former president confirmed his indictment shortly after the initial announcement, the AP reported. In a March 18th Truth Social post, Trump said he would be arrested on the 21st and called for people to protest and take our nation back. Okay, so basically after that, they postpone the indictment, things get delayed, then a bunch of people who are, conservative but not pro-Trump started saying Trump's grifting, he's lying, it's not going to happen. Then today they announced, the grand jury was going to be suspended for a month, and then all of a sudden, just like a couple hours ago, they announced they voted to indict Donald Trump. So obviously, my opinion on this, as we've talked about before, is this is silly and stupid, but while we have you, man, what do you think?
If he committed a crime, I think that you should have the book thrown at him. I think generally this is a misdemeanor crime. Usually there's a statute of limitations, but if records were falsified in an attempt to cover up another crime, then the statute of limitations is extended. But I don't think any of us have seen the indictment yet, so I wait till they unseal the indictment to see how silly or stupid I think it is. But hey, if he broke the law, I think you should have the book thrown at him. Even ex-presidents, I don't believe, are above the law. So
I absolutely agree. I'd like to see more presidents get arrested and charged.
Oh, it made me nervous, guys. It's the first time in history a president's ever been indicted.
I agree. I don't care. If they break the law, then they should be charged. My issue, I suppose, is it seems overtly political.
how come without seeing the indictment?
That's a fair point.
but you just said that.
It seems overtly political. It's fair to say we don't know for sure, but it seems that way, especially considering the dude campaigned on investigating Trump. They spent years, and this was the best they could come up with, that Cohen paid Stormy Daniels to not write a book or give an interview or whatever about banging Trump, and that Trump tried claiming it was legal fees, despite the fact that a letter was put out 2018 where Cohen's lawyer said Cohen paid for it out of pocket, was never reimbursed. So that feels kind of like exculpatory evidence outright, which makes this seem political.
So do you think that the payments to him that were recorded in the book, do you think that's all fake, or?
I don't know. Well, definitely, I'm interested in seeing what the reason.
I just don't understand, because the thing that drives me crazy is happens to indicate stuff too, where things will come out and people immediately say this is political, it's partisan. It's like, why not just wait till the indictments come out and then we can actually see. When the indictments come out, it might be that there's a lot of stuff in there. It's like, oh, okay, that's fair, and it might be, wow, this is BS. Like, it's obviously
because
political.
Brad campaigned on doing this.
Sure, but people can campaign on all sorts of things, right? Julian campaigned on the guy that
literally makes it political.
If you campaign on enforcing laws, is that political?
No, he campaigned on investigating Trump.
Maybe thought Trump broke some laws.
But it's like,
it seems like a fair thing to campaign on.
Show me the man, I'll show you the law that he broke, right?
Well, we're about to see that show once the indictments are unsealed, huh?
So here's what I think with the potential of this case. You have a lawyer? I imagine you've gone through legal stuff, right?
Not like a dedicated one, but I have a couple depending on what I'm going through. Yeah.
Do you go through their itemized invoices? You might. I don't know if you do or not.
I've never made a single payment of over $10,000 to a lawyer. So usually they send me the itemized thing, and they bill by every 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
These bills that Trump's paying are over hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I think for Cohen wasn't it like 330,000 or something at the end of the day.
Something like that. And so I really doubt Trump was handed this invoice, looked at it and said, no, we can't say we paid Stormy. That's illegal. Let's falsify this record. He probably got a legal bill, was like, just pay him. I don't know, whatever. Right?
Didn't Cohen claim that he and Trump had personal conversations about this particular issue?
Yes, after the fact. But in 2018, Cohen's lawyer claimed Cohen paid for it personally without instruction from Trump and was never reimbursed for it.
Sure. Do you think has Cohen claimed otherwise though?
After the fact, yes, Cohen has claimed otherwise.
So, and those claims were under oath, correct?
Then he should be charged with perjury if that's the case.
But was the statements by his boss, were those statements under oath?
His boss?
Yeah, or the other lawyer. Yeah, the other lawyer. Were those under oath?
I don't know who the letter was filed with.
Something that Rosenstein said that I think is really important when he was asked for questioning, this was like 3 or 4 years ago, I think, is he would get very irritated when he was brought before Congress and claims of the media, I think Jim Jordan did this to him, he claims from the media would be brought before him and they'd say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? He's like, well, I don't think that's true. He's like, do you think they're lying? And something Rosenstein said was, well, if you think they're lying, bring them and have them testify under oath. So I think it's important when we look at people's statements. People say a lot of things. We saw this with Giuliani and his claims about Trump. People say a lot of things, and then when they're under oath, their stories change significantly. So I'd always be cautious to compare statements made under oath to something that some guy might have just said in a letter or said to the press or said to a friend.
Who's Rosenstein?
I think this was sent to the Federal Election Commission.
Maybe.
Yeah, second
it says,
electoral
email Federal Election Commission, Office of Complaints Examination and Legal Administration, attention Crystal Dennis. And the letter says that Cohen did it of his own volition. He paid for it out of pocket. He was never reimbursed. So I would put it this way. It seems political when you have a letter like this from 5 years ago. But again, fair point. We'll see what happens. My issue with it for the most part is, really? Falsified record misdemeanor charge? You want to get into the debate about Barack Obama blowing up a kid? Because I would absolutely love to talk about that. Look, if they want to give Trump a misdemeanor charge, lock him up for however many months a misdemeanor gets him, I would absolutely be willing to make that to agree. You're right. He's got to be charged. Next up, Obama, he blew up a kid. He blew up a bunch of kids.
I don't know if Obama broke a law.
I don't think Americans of any capacity are allowed to kill other Americans.
Of any capacity? Don't cops do it all the time?
Not like.
I mean, it seems like they're in the service of doing.
A little bit of a semantic trick you played there, right?
Okay.
Obviously, you can kill people in self-defense, but Obama bombed a civilian restaurant in Yemen, a country we're not at war with, killing civilians, including a 16-year-old American citizen. Like, you can't, if you're in the military, you can't just, or a cop, you can't just go and kill somebody.
Murder. You can't murder.
Yeah, but I imagine the justification Obama would use was that this was in defense of U.S. interests or defense of the United States. And in his role as commander-in-chief, the president of the United States has offered wide deference from the Supreme Court for taking actions in the Commission of protecting the United States.
This is important.
Yeah, I think that's criminal. I mean,
that's fine, but there's a question of like, is it illegal versus do you think it's criminal, like bad, right? It's probably bad, I guess, but like.
So the Obama administration's argument was that they were trying to target a terrorist leader.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not. I mean, you make a fair point, but I'd be willing to argue that the president does not have the authority to bomb countries we're not at war with.
Well, what about when Trump assassinated Soleimani? That was an assassination.
Where was that taking place in?
In Iraq.
In Iraq,
Yeah.
A country we have an AUMF over, an authorization for use of military force.
I don't think the authorization for use of military force. I'm pretty sure we were on good terms with Iraq at that point. I don't know if we had the ability to do whatever we wanted in that country. That was a political assassination, though. But there are executive orders that are against the United States.
I don't disagree.
Sure. I'm just saying that in general, there's multiple questions going on here. We can say, do we think it's wrong or bad? Probably. I think generally the United States president killing American citizens is generally a bad thing, unless there's really good justification for it. But there's a difference between that versus is it illegal? And I think that the law tends to. We argued about this a little bit before the show. When Trump was doing things at the border that we thought, when I say we progressives and the left got really mad at, the Supreme Court tended to side with him because the president's given wide deference over matters of
what was he doing
national
on the
security. I think it was when he was using. He couldn't get the funding for the border wall. No. It was over banning certain people coming into the country. When he named there were 7 Muslim majority countries, and when he was running for president, even Giuliani said he's trying to find ways to do a Muslim majority ban. Technically, he's not allowed to do that.
Venezuela and North Korea were on that list, though.
Yeah, well, he changed it up. I think after the first one didn't go through for whatever reason. But once he did that ban, when people tried to challenge it, the Supreme Court basically said, president, border, he can do almost anything he wants because it's the president.
Yeah, but that's not blowing up a kid.
I didn't say it was blowing up a kid, but I'm saying that in general,
Okay.
you would think that like when we're talking like border, if we're talking about like passing policy at the border, it's a congressional thing. Like we should be passing laws about immigration policy, but the president can do that basically all on his own because the Supreme Court's like, hey, he's the president, national security, he can do almost whatever he wants.
I think I see the disconnect. I'm less concerned with legality.
Okay, I'm only talking legalities.
Right. So I think that a president who bombs a country we're not at war with should be stripped of his power and criminally charged for killing an American citizen. And it should be literally under the U.S. murder statutes that are covered by multiple state and federal laws. I don't look at it like, well, you know.
Is a murder statute? Could I in Tennessee get arrested if I bomb somebody in Yemen? Is that I don't know what the.
I mean, that's a good point. You might, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that might be like way worse than murder. It might be terroristic, international. There might, like, I'm pretty sure if you, as an American citizen, set up a bomb in a foreign country, you'd be criminally charged in the U.S.
Yeah, but I don't know if it'd be under state statutes, right? That sounds like some
Federal.
international, federal. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Julian Assange is being criminally charged in the U.S. even though he's not a U.S. citizen who didn't do anything in the United States. Kim.com for that matter too. I mean, the dude's never was never this country, and they went after him. So
I just think that I think it's really important that we separate conversations of what should somebody be charged with versus like what we think is wrong. And I think both conversations are important. We can talk about like is this wrong or is it not wrong, and there's probably a good conversation we had there. But there's a difference between that versus like somebody needs to be charged here. It's like, well, charged with what? Is there actually a crime broken, or is it just like we're really upset about this particular thing, which is fair?
Yeah, I think the Patriot Act's insane, and the National Defense Authorization Act insane. It gives them it really gives the president the authority to bomb an American citizen anywhere in the United States.
It doesn't. It gives them the right to rendition anyone, anywhere in the world, and then hold secret tribunals. And I think that's wrong. And I think if we're going to just play like the question of is it legal, well then there's a whole lot of really awful stuff the government's going to end up doing if we just say, well, they made it legal so they can do it. But
but this is what I always fight against. Like when it comes to like BLM and everything too. It's important to change the laws. If we want people to be held accountable, we have to change the laws to reflect what we think our moral will is, so that we can actually get people to be held accountable. Because otherwise, you just get a bunch of people that are like, this is wrong. Do something. It's like, okay, well, I don't know what you want us to do. Like it's not illegal. Like we can't do anything about it. You know?
If we changed the law and made it illegal to bomb kids in Yemen, then we wouldn't be able to charge people that were doing it while it was legal because it was legal when they did it.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, do we want to make it so that when we change laws, we can retroactively?
No,
right?
I don't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Like we're probably only we're ever officially at war with Syria, right?
No.
But Trump bombed the airport. Is that like? But again, he's the president. It's our military. Like.
I guess the other question is, you know, in talking about Abdulrahman al-Awlaki, he wasn't the intended target. The intended target was somebody else. And he had just a few weeks prior killed Anwar al-Awlaki, Abdulrahman's dad. So he kills this guy who's an American citizen, then argues, well, look, you know, he was a jihadi. He was preaching against the United States. He had to be stopped. But then a few weeks later, he targets a civilian restaurant in Yemen, blows up this restaurant with a drone strike, killing Anwar al-Awlaki's son, Abdulrahman. And the response was, well, we were targeting a terror leader, so it's okay. So I guess the question is, I'm curious as to the legalities and the moral standing of, one, does the president have the legal authority to kill anyone in any country at any time in the eyes of the United States? If he does and hits the wrong target and kills an innocent American citizen, is there a manslaughter similar charge for this kind of conflict?
I think internationally, unfortunately, I think we just don't tend to hold countries responsible. This has happened multiple times. I'll avoid the USS Liberty example because that's a whole loaded thing. But there was, let's see, I think Iran, after we killed Soleimani, in the night or the night after that followed, Iran accidentally shot down, I think, one of their own civilian airliners. And there were no charges. Nothing was held for that. I believe...
In Iran?
In Iran, yeah.
And they're like authoritarian, though, you know?
True. No, I'm just saying, but internationally, I believe it happened over Ukraine as well. I think that there was a missile launched from Crimea, I believe. It was probably with the assistance of Russian troops there. There was a civilian airliner shot down there. But nothing happened. The United States, I believe, I think we shot down a civilian plane that killed like over 150 or over 200 people. That might have been south of Iran, I think, flying towards Saudi Arabia maybe, and we didn't do anything about that. We said sorry, but I think that was like 200 or so civilians. I mean, it happens, it sucks, but I mean, precedent internationally is that like sometimes mistakes happen, countries do mistakes, they're bad, and you pay money sometimes, but there's usually not like criminal courts for those types of mistakes. If it was proven, then yeah, of course we say, yeah, but
the best I could do on short notice, the ACLU wrote an article saying that it was unlawful.
Well, if the ACLU said it.
No, I mean, yeah, it's
when they said which was unlawful.
Not just the killing of Abdulrahman al-Awlaki, but the other civilians that were killed in these countries we're not at war with was, it says the killing program isn't only unlawful, it's unwise. And that's about, you know, on the short term. There have been legal arguments made that Obama does have the right to kill Americans abroad, but I kind of feel like, you know, we've got multiple amendments that afford American citizens a plethora of rights before they can just kill you. So that's where I'm at on the issue, I suppose.
Do you still have American rights when you're in another country?
You still pay taxes, so yes, you do. And the State Department will send guys to rescue you if you're kidnapped.
Maybe.
This is the first I've heard of USS Liberty that you mentioned earlier.
Oh God, no! Don't even do it.
1967, during the Israeli Six-Day War, they accidentally torpedoed or they shot down a.
Yeah, but depending on who you ask, it's not an accident. That's like a whole can of worms of weird Jewish stuff.
Let's jump to this next story.
Jewish,
From timcast.com, quote, political persecution, election interference at the highest level in history. Trump responds to indictment, will reportedly surrender early next week. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The statement from Trump, let's pull it up, let's read it. Here we go, if I can, text kind of small. He writes, this is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. From the time I came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, and even before I was sworn in as your president of the United States, the radical left Democrats, the enemy of hardworking men and women of this country, have been engaged in a witch hunt to destroy the Make America Great Again movement. You remember it just like I do. Russia, 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 the Mueller hoax, Ukraine, 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 impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, the illegal and unconstitutional Mar-a-Lago raid, and now this. The Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump. But now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The Democrats have cheated countless times over the decades, including spying on my campaign, but weaponizing our justice system to punish a political opponent who just so happens to be a president of the United States, and by far the leading Republican candidate for president, has never happened before ever. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who was handpicked and funded by George Soros, is a disgrace. Rather than stopping the unprecedented crime wave taking over New York City, he's doing Joe Biden's dirty work, ignoring the murders and burglaries and assaults he should be focused on. This is how Bragg spends his time. I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg, and then we will defeat Joe Biden, and we are going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again. Well, very interesting. What do you think?
Nice one.
They better be doing a really good job at that office. I think there's a lot of political consideration that has to go into these charges because it's a really scary world when your criminal justice system is potentially interfering with an election, which is something that, despite what some Americans think, that's all of our intelligence agencies try really hard to avoid this exact scenario where you might be indicting or arresting or charging with crimes like somebody that could be running for president. So I hope that whatever they have, I hope that these indictments are unsealed, some really solid stuff, and it's not just a whole bunch of Lucy whatever that ends up falling apart.
What do you think about, he mentions Ukraine. What do you remember the whole Ukrainegate fiasco impeachment? Donald Trump quid pro quo.
Yep, I do remember that. Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
Am I allowed to say the F word?
After 15 seconds, yeah.
I mean, we're trying to keep it
First 15 seconds, they demonetize.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm okay with that impeachment, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
You think Trump committed a crime?
Absolutely.
You want to elaborate? I know it might be. It's been a long time.
It's been a while, but my understanding was that Trump contacted Ukraine, Zelensky, and he was asking if there was wrongdoing done by, I think it was by Biden, and finding that prosecutor, and if they had any information about potential wrongdoings that Hunter Biden or Joe Biden had been involved in Ukraine. And in exchange for that, he wanted to withhold aid that was already congressionally approved to Ukraine for that.
So what's wrong with that? Like, why is that a problem?
Legally or morally, or
both, either, whatever you think.
Legally, I believe it's because I don't think the president has the authority to withhold that aid. I don't remember what the legal arguments were on that. For the moral part is our president probably shouldn't be asking other countries to investigate like wrongdoings of political opponents. That's a really.
But Joe Biden wasn't running for office at the time.
I mean, then why was he? Hold on, I'm trying to think of the timeline for this.
Yeah, Joe Biden. It was a year before he announced. That was part of the controversy, that Joe Biden had not announced he was running for office at all.
No, but hold on. He might not have announced it, but like, pretty sure most people knew he was running. Like in the early polls, like if you looked at Real Clear Progress, if you looked at a lot of the polling aggregate sites, like they were already polling Biden. He'd already been factored in quite a while. He might have announced that he was going to run for office, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people were expecting it.
I mean that's just speculative media stuff. So Trump isn't actively investigating a political opponent, unless the argument is we all secretly knew that was going to be the case. There were, like Bernie Sanders was still in the race. There were a bunch of other people. At the time, the controversy was like, why Joe Biden? There were other Democrats that were actually talking about running, and it wasn't Joe Biden. He announced late.
He did announce late, but he was still factored into the polls really early because like, a lot of people thought he was going to run. The question is though, do we want the president contacting other, even if he's not running? He's still
what if the vice president did the same thing? Is that
if the vice president was? I think that anytime you're reaching out, like let's ask if we pull back on a macro level, why is Trump asking this information? Does he genuinely think that there's been some grave wrongdoing done by the Bidens that needs to be corrected for? Yeah. And if so, why isn't he asking our intelligence agencies for information about this? Why is he going to another country and asking?
I mean, it's with the Five Eyes Bible. We do that all the time.
Where we don't do that all the time. Going to another leader and saying, "Hey, I need you to get dirt on a potential political opponent," because I think there's something.
Well, he wasn't a political opponent, and
he is a political. Even if he was the vice president of the former opposite party guy that he just as he came to office. What do you mean? He's some kind of political opponent, right? I mean, even if he wasn't directly running yet, like I would argue, if he was asking this for like AOC, for instance, I would say that it's similar.
Trump didn't go to the president of Ukraine and say, "I got this political opponent I need dirt on." He said, "What's up with this video of Joe Biden threatening to withhold congressionally approved aid unless you take action on his behalf?" And the president of Ukraine was like, "I'm not sure." He goes, "Well, can you look into that? I want to know what that's about."
It wasn't just can you look into that. It was if you don't find what I need, I might withhold aid that's already been congressionally approved for you. And that was the issue. If he was just asking questions, we wouldn't be having the conversation. He wasn't impeached, right?
So this is the point that I'm getting at. When this started, and Donald Trump asked about this, specifically because there was a viral video of Joe Biden outright admitting to threatening to withhold congressionally approved aid unless a prosecutor got fired, you had Joe Biden breaking the law.
Sure. So there was a video of Joe Biden on stage making the claim/joke on stage where he's saying, "I told him you don't do it, you're not going to blah 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 blah." But in terms of him, but in terms of there actually being a serious offer on the table where he was like threatening to withhold aid, I'm not even sure if that was ever the case. We have that one statement that he was making. Number one,
signed a sworn affidavit that's what happened.
Sure. Number one. Number two, the impetus for Shokin being removed from Ukraine was not to get some kind of political dirt on an opponent. It was a completely different scenario. This is a prosecutor that all of Europe and over half of Ukraine wanted fired. That the United States was acting on behalf of the Western world and trying to pressure this prosecutor out because of his lack of prosecuting corruption in the country. That's a totally different thing than I threatened to withhold aid from this guy because he's not giving me dirt on potential political opponents.
So why is it that the guy who was being investigated, Mykola Zlochevsky, returned to the country? He had fled when Shokin was investigating him, and then after Joe Biden got Shokin removed, Zlochevsky returned to the country to begin working on Burisma again.
Why did he return to the country?
Well,
I could have been for any number of reasons. I'm not sure.
Right, so the argument from the Democrats, the specific corruption that wasn't being prosecuted referring to is the prosecution of Mykola Zlochevsky, the founder of Burisma.
Okay.
And the argument they made was he wasn't investigating him. That was the problem. And then Joe Biden says, and we got him out, and then they put in someone solid. The only issue is when Shokin had about a dozen active investigations into Burisma and Zlochevsky fled the country. They froze his account. When Biden came in and got the prosecutor fired, Zlochevsky safely returned to Ukraine without fear of criminal prosecution. When Donald Trump made that phone call, Zlochevsky fled again. So it sounds more like, you've got Hunter Biden on the board of Burisma, you got former CIA director on the board of Burisma, and Zlochevsky, the founder, and Shokin had 12 different around 12 to 14.
All of the investigations into Burisma were dead.
No, that's not true.
It was
wrong.
Absolutely true.
Completely
They
false.
were only revived 1 month before Shokin was forced out. Every single one of those probes was completely dead.
That's wrong.
You can Google it and look for it if you want.
So I'm citing Matt Taibbi.
God.
Right, and if you don't want to trust a journalist or whatever,
Or like any actual article, not a tweet. Like any
I'm
actual.
talking about an article that he wrote breaking down what happened with Ukraine and his investigation into Zlochevsky, and this is from like 2016.
Okay, so your claim is that the probes into Burisma never went cold and never died, that they were active the entire time?
They were active the entire right.
Okay, my understanding is that those probes were all cold and all dead, and it was part of the reason why
dead before nice and cold.
That's the same thing. They were being actively worked on. So there were probes that nobody was doing anything with until it was 1 month before Shokin was actually ousted that there was some progress started to be made on those.
So that's a very difficult question to get into. The fact is there were active investigations.
Well, but that's kind of the meat of what we're talking about, right?
Well, so
it's kind of the point to settle the fact of the matter. That, yeah.
Were there 12 investigations? Yes or no?
I know that there were investigations open for a couple of years, but my understanding is they were open. It's not all that matters. They were dead investigations. There wasn't any progress being made on it. That's what I read that was reported.
Right, my point is this.
But that's pretty important because if they're being actively investigated, then that obviously changes a little bit the story that we're telling.
So did Shokin have investigations into Burisma and Zlochevsky? Yes, he had about a dozen.
But whether or not investigations live or dead, isn't that important? You don't think so?
Did Zlochevsky flee the country while these were on the books? Yes, he did.
When
Shokin was removed and the investigations were officially stricken, Zlochevsky returns.
So do you think that there are criminal wrongdoings that he's done that he's not being prosecuted for?
What I think is that the United States is in an energy crisis, in a war with Eastern powers. The United States has been trying to get a pipeline for natural gas called the Qatar-Turkey pipeline into Europe, but Syria said no. Syria destabilizes for whatever reason. We want to run that pipeline through Syria, through Turkey, into Europe to offset the Gazprom gas monopoly. Russia runs natural gas into Europe through Ukraine through Gazprom. It's about 20%. It's massively powerful for them and allows them to control prices. The United States has interests in setting up an energy company to offset that monopoly, hence Burisma. Hunter Biden's on the board, probably for these reasons. A former CIA director, probably for these reasons.
Wasn't Burisma one of the smaller gas companies in that country?
Absolutely. And it seems like the U.S. was trying to compete with Russia to get cheaper gas to Europe. And the argument made was that Europe was constrained by high gas prices from Russia, and that we wanted the European economy to be bolstered and grow faster to compete with China, but Russia was basically keeping us pinned down.
Sure. This is nice conjecture, but is there anything backing up any of this aside from
This is all the official reporting.
What do you mean by official reporting?
So the
There's
only
official reporting that we
speculation
got rid
I
of
have.
Shokin because we wanted to bolster U.S. interest.
That's the only speculation I have. I'm saying based on the facts, it seems to me the issue was Shokin did have investigations into Burisma, which is a problem for U.S. interests, not because of corruption, but because it's more of a war front. It's more of a.
Do you think that Shokin was a corrupt prosecutor?
No.
Okay. Why did all of Europe and a lot of Ukraine hate him?
Because Europe wants cheap gas. Shokin was impeding that. It's not an issue of corruption. It's an issue of conflicting
He was
interests.
impeding how?
So active investigations into Burisma are impeding U.S. interests in competing with Gazprom.
Burisma isn't even the largest gas player in that country, though.
That's not the point. We don't have the Qatar-Turkey pipeline into Ukraine because Syria blocked it. So you have a multi-front effort going back to, I think, like the 2000s to get cheaper natural gas into Europe. So of course they're not going to like anybody who's got Eastern allegiances. It's possible that with Ukraine you had, in the eastern part of the country, more pro-Russia sentiment. With Yanukovych you had more pro-Russia sentiment. And you had government officials that were like, look, we're not just pro-West. Of course then he gets ousted. There's unrest. I can't remember.
What do you mean for Yanukovych, though? Yanukovych was standing alone with that pro-Russian status, though. That wasn't all the government officials. That was part of the reasons why people were so upset with Yanukovych was because he was trying to push for Russia in opposition to what their parliament was even pushing.
That's what I'm saying. And so there's probably, he wasn't the only person. The sentiment was fairly split, but was leaning towards the EU.
Had been voted on by their parliament to favor the EU. That was what the vote was for.
And so the way I see it is there are probably elements of that government that were more favorable to Russia, which is why Europe doesn't like them. The people, Ukrainians who want to be part of the EU, members of the EU who want Ukraine to join because they want more control over natural gas, of course naturally would oppose anybody who was siding with Russia.
Do you think that Ukraine was a corrupt country prior to 2014?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
do you think so? So for all of
Yeah,
Europe
and,
and for everybody complaining about the corruption and stuff relating to Shokin, you think that all of that was BS and they just didn't like it because he was preventing their cheap oil or cheap gas?
Say that one more time.
You think that all of the upsetness that people across Europe and Ukraine had with Shokin had nothing to do with any of the corruption in the country or his lack of pressuring? Because that's the official story that's given. It seems to be pretty consistent throughout
I can only speak on a surface level about this one particular issue because I don't know the inner workings of all of Ukrainian politics.
Okay.
But what I do know is there's been a tremendous effort by Western forces leading to outright physical military conflict to get natural gas into Europe to offset Russia's control of gas prices. Naturally, it seems like these things are related. Speculative. The facts are the U.S. went to Syria and said, can we build the Qatar-Turkey pipeline? Syria literally said to the United States, that would be bad for our ally Russia, so we will not allow it. Fortunately for us, for whatever reason, Syria falls into civil war, and we just happen to oppose the guy who denied that. I don't think the whole reason for opposing it has to do with gas, but it's convenient for us nonetheless. We weren't able to do it, and to make it worse, Iran wanted to tap the same natural gas field and send the gas through Iraq and Turkey into Europe to strengthen Russia's control of energy. So the argument was the EU is trying to grow and become a unified bloc to compete with the growth of China, and Russia was basically impeding us because Russia wants to be their own big dog, right?
Sure. So Man, if you ever wanted to revisit a detailed breakdown of this, I'd be interested to do a little bit of reading prior to this. But let's say hypothetically I grant you all of that. Why didn't Trump say any of that?
Trump doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Okay, so then Trump's
That's enough.
investigation into the impetus for this whole
Nice. Are you on the
conversation.
internet, bro?
Okay, so the impetus for this whole conversation of like Trump pressuring them to find out if any wrongdoings happened had nothing to do with anything you just laid out. It was just having to do with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden.
It had to do with him seeing a video and then seeing people and post memes. Probably, to be completely honest, it was Tucker Carlson who said something.
But it was a little bit more than just asking questions, because if he was just curious, I don't think that the question of aid being withheld would have ever been brought up in that conversation. So clearly there was a little bit. You're saying that Biden wasn't seen as a political opponent at all, but if that was the case, I don't know why Trump would go so far to try to solicit information from the Ukrainian government such that he would withhold aid or threaten to withhold aid in exchange for some information about him.
You know,
It seems like a random politician to target. Like, why would he be so dead set on getting information about Biden?
The Democrats, they were calling him a Russian spy.
I think there's a little bit.
Like,
I think it has to be a little bit more than that. Revenge to throw away.
Sure,
to get impeached.
I mean, you can think that, but I don't even care all that much about the speculation as to why he did it, right?
Sure.
If you want to argue,
well, I think that's probably one of the most important parts. That is the most important part, is why he did it.
But you have to make assumptions to get to that point.
If he's asking for dirt specifically with respect to a political opponent, I'm making assumptions. I feel like there's a lot more assumptions being made on your end that he was just genuinely interested in what Joe Biden had said and was threatening to withhold aid because he wanted a legitimate investigation of the firing of a prosecutor.
I mean,
I feel like it's pretty legitimate.
What you know is that he said, "What's going on with this video? I want to see some action on this, or else," right?
I feel like there was a little bit more said than that, but I don't remember it's in a long time.
Well, I'm trying to paraphrase for the sake of it.
Sure, but I feel like the specific requests he was making for information are probably pretty important. I can look up exactly what the charges alleged, but it's been a while.
So I guess the reason I bring it up is not to just debate Trump or whatever, but to ask the question of, should we indict Joe Biden?
Este was be TTV, que já me